Hey, thank you all for the opportunity to share our story. When we heard about the conference, we thought really the purpose of the presentation is to just share our experience. Because as Gary mentioned earlier, there are a number of volunteer lookout scenarios. Some have gone well and some have had a hard time getting off the ground. Because we have 14 years of history, we thought this might be a story of interest for other people as well. And so I thought the way we put this together, just brief introductions of the Forest Service and the Lookout, the nonprofit. And then to talk a little bit about the partnership, how it came about, lessons learned, what our challenges are. And then we thought we would end, we have 3 trivia questions about lookouts. We thought this is the perfect group. And yes, we do have prizes to go with if you figure out the answer. So to get started, a little bit about the Bitterroot National Forest. In Montana, it's 1.6 million acres. What you're looking at here on the map, the west ridgeline are the Bitterroot Mountains. The east is the Sapphire Mountains. The red dots, which I realize you can't see, are the series of lookouts in our region, in the Bitterroot National Forest. Today, there are 9 active lookouts, and 8 of them are staffed by seasonal employees. St. Mary Lookout, which is up here in the corner. I don't know if this was going to work. Nope, up here in the corner is the St. Mary Lookout. Yeah, I think that's all we'll say about that. Selway-Bitterroot Frank Church Wilderness Foundation. You may or may not be familiar with it, but it's really a great organization. And yes, we did bring some bling. They are postcards of the lookout with a little description of Selway-Bitterroot. So if you're interested, we'll pass the postcards around at the end. The mission is connecting individuals and communities to wilderness since 2006. And there are a number of different programs here. I won't go through all of them, but 2 I do want to point out, the Wilderness Ranger Fellowship. This is really a cool program. It's about 10 years old. SBFC, short for Selway-Bitterroot, that's a mouthful, invites or takes applications from college students who are interested in doing really challenging trail work. And a lot of you guys have done it and know trail work over the course of the summer. And in addition to their fellowship, or as part of it, they get introduced and meet with different Forest Service leaders in regions, archaeologists, wildlife biologists. And our hope in the creation of the program was to really begin to light the fire, if it wasn't already lit, and then really connect college students and sort of the next generation of leaders. What's been really cool over the past 10 years is to watch what happens to some of those folks and where they go. And sure enough, and probably no surprise, we are seeing them in leadership positions of conservation organizations, public lands, the Forest Service throughout the Pacific Northwest. We fall under the volunteer stewardship program. St. Mary Lookout, St. Mary Peak Lookout is the only lookout that is part of that volunteer program. What you're looking at here, and I just have to give you 1 minute of history. So St. Mary Peak was named by Jesuit missionaries who came into Western Montana in about 1840. The Flathead Indian Reservation, or the Flathead Indian tribe, was primarily the main residents of that area. And one of the Jesuit missionaries, Father Jean-Pierre de Smet, really took it upon himself to build a log cabin mission, which was called St. Mary Mission. He was interested and thought it was really important to put a landmark on the summit of St. Mary Peak. And so that's how it got its name, named after the mother of Jesus Christ. And he went on from there to name St. Joseph Peak off to the north, Heavenly Twins out to the west. And so that's how sort of the name came about. And I'll link back to this in just a minute. About 100 years later, about 1934, the Forest Service decided that would be a good location for a lookout. And so the Civilian Conservation Corps, just as Don mentioned, built the lookout. The original, you're looking at the picture of it today, it's at 9,350 feet. The original was the classic L4 construction, so it was 50 feet off the ground. In 1953, in a huge windstorm, the cab blew off the top. And when the reconstruction happened 2 years later, they decided wisely to put it just 1 story off the ground. and create a native rock foundation for the lookout itself. It is the classic L4 hip roof cabin, and in 2017 we were added to the National Registry of Historic Places. What's unique about St. Mary Peak Lookout, it is located in the Selway-Bitterroot Wilderness area. So as you hike in, you start on public land, you start in the National Forest, and about 7 miles in, you cross into the wilderness border. And I mentioned the altitude, or the altitude of the lookout is 9,350 feet. And here's what's, I think, one of the really unique things about St. Mary, and it sometimes horrifies, when Gary Weber talked this morning about some lookouts are really hardcore that should only be used for fire detection. We are a big variation on that theme. And here's why. The St. Mary Trail is one of the premier, most popular hiking destinations in the Bitterroot Valley, which means, well, the trailhead is at 6,850 feet. It's about in a 3.5 mile hike, 2,500 feet vertical. So it's a heart pumper to get up there. We average over this says 10, but we average over an 8-week period, about 1,200 visitors in an 8-week period. So that would work out to about 25 people a day if it worked that way, which of course it doesn't. And more about that in a minute. The other thing that's unique about St. Mary Lookout, it says here, we have a kind of world-class pit toilet. It is, the lookout itself is rustic. There's no power, there's no water. And the pit toilet is apparently, I'm told on Instagram, listed as the best view without a room. So it is just the pit toilet and you are looking out among the Bitterroot Valley. And the way we learned that is a guy hiked up 1 or 2 summers ago with his phone and just said, "Where's your pit toilet?" And I was trying to, it's not generally open to the public, just because you can imagine why, because of the volume of hikers. And he said, "Do you realize you are listed on the top 10 best pit toilets, outdoor pit toilets?" Yeah, and I was like, don't think I needed to know that. Okay. So a little bit about how the partnership came about. I love this. Dave found this poster, "Only you can prevent forest fires." And then this is from 2015. The addition at the bottom is, "Seriously, we've been defunded and it's just you now." And even though this was originally posted in 2015, it is so relevant today. Yeah. And so, but literally how this partnership came about is in 2011 at the request of the Bitterroot National Forest. So SBFC agreed to take responsibility for the continued operation of St. Mary Lookout. What had happened was, because St. Mary is on the eastern slope, or the east, do I have this right? Because St. Mary is on the west side of the valley, and that's the side that most of the lightning strikes and where the fires are, it was more important to have lookout staffed on the east side so that they had a great view. And there were other reasons, funding and other things as well, but that's really how it came about. So I thought it might be interesting just to give you a couple highlights of what's SBFC, what's the nonprofit responsible for, and what's the Forest Service responsible for. Because I think we've worked that out well over the 14 years, and things run pretty smoothly. This is one of our colleagues, Gordon Schofield. Gordon was one of the originals 14 years ago. He's retired after 40 years with the Forest Service, kind of man in action. And one of the things we're responsible for is 8 weeks of staffing. So we have, generally, we have 4 2-week hitches. So Lookout hikes up. There is a pack support that provides wood and water, and you get a set of panniers for your gear, and then anything else you have to carry up yourself. In addition, here's a picture of Dave. We're responsible for protection of the lookout, both protection from weather. As you can imagine, at 9350, there are some fabulous storms that come through, but the lookout really takes a beating. And so the protection is both here, Dave is last summer painting the external of the lookout, but it's also protection from vandals and vandalism, to be honest. Yeah. And I hesitate using the word vandals because I'm at the University of Idaho, but we're gonna keep going. All right, and then also what we're responsible for is visitor education. you see someone here coming into the lookout and curious just what's the daily life of a lookout? What are you guys doing? How does the alidade work? What happens if you see a smoke? So there are the opportunities to provide that kind of information. A lot of people aren't interested and they're just like, what do you do here all day? And it just is interesting, the conversations. One of our other responsibilities is reporting big weather. I'm sorry you can't, what you're looking at here, this shot was taken in August in a rain and windstorm. And so the ice has formed horizontally. It was that windy that as soon as it hit the guide wire on the lookout, it was really cool. And then lastly, this is St. Mary Peak. Here's a smoke out in the Bitterroot Forest. So we do have responsibility for some fire detection, but to be honest, most often we are the second point. Willow Mountain on the east side will see something and call us for sort of to take a look at it as well. And then what the Forest Service is responsible for is, here's Steve Brown, a district manager on the Steve I district from a few years ago. So Forest Service provides training on all the forest management duties. So the volunteer lookouts attend the same training that the seasonal employees go through. Reen Eustace is here. Many of you may know him. Reen actually conducts that training every June and gets us off to a good start. Forest Service is also responsible for pack support, and sometimes they literally provide the pack support. They provide a crew for helping us open and close the lookout. Most all of you know the L4 construction has the really heavy shutters, and it just takes some strength, to get those, kind of navigate those. Really, just a year or two ago, we started a daily check-in. So the Forest Service is responsible for an 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. check-in phone call with the volunteer lookout. And then the last bullet here is they're responsible for maintaining the infrastructure. And we just got the news that we're up for, St. Mary Peak is up for a major kind of update this summer in August. And that's really significant because now that we're on the National Historic Registry, our MacGyver, and Dave is really a MacGyver, the MacGyver approaches to maintenance are not really, we can't do those as much anymore, all right, because they're really strict guidelines to follow with the designation. In terms of the partnership and what's working, this first bullet just talks about it. It keeps one of the most heavily used trails in the Bitterroot open and safe and maintained. As many of you know, lookouts serve as eyes in the sky for the fire crews. So when they are in one of the canyons, we provide that, as do all lookouts, the relay, communication relay for them. Increases the management capacity of the Bitterroot National Forest. It's just, there are more people involved in fire detection, as part of having St. Mary's staff or lookout staff. And then increased wilderness stewardship. This is really a shared goal, and in some ways the glue for the SBFC, that is the mission of the nonprofit and the Forest Service. All right, so that's what's working. A couple of lessons learned. I think this first one says early on, establishing trust and credibility with the Forest Service. Gary really spoke to this early on, that not everybody was welcoming to a volunteer effort. I think that's diminished for us in particular over the years, just because we've had the same people involved. And so we've been able to build some relationships and, not burn the place down or do something really, really stupid. Communication and consistency, just because there's so many moving parts. There's the Forest Service, there's the nonprofit, there's the volunteers, there's the public. One of the lessons we learned that's just kind of interesting, this is Patrick McCarran, one of our veteran lookouts as well. We had a miscommunication with pack support. I mentioned earlier, they bring up water and firewood. And it's cold at 9350, even in August. The mornings and evenings are cold. So having plenty of wood for the wood stove is really important. Well, somehow, I don't know, we got on the wrong different wavelengths about who was bringing wood. And so Patrick came up with this great idea. to put a sign up that says, be nice to your lookout, come up with one stick. So this was at the trailhead. It was amazing the number of people who carried wood up, and we tried to have different sizes, you know, depending on the workout that you wanted to have to do. And so that worked the first year, but it really caught, I can't say it caught fire. It really caught on in that we didn't have the sign up the next year and people continued to bring wood. Then we didn't have the sign up the next year and people asked us, what happened to the sign? And would continue to bring up wood. At the end of last season, this sign says, please, no more firewood, because we didn't have any place to store it up there. But I think it really speaks to just how engaged people are with this particular lookout. We've had, well, I'll come back to that. Other lessons learned, visitor impact and waste issues. I mean, 1,200 visitors in a 10-week period. There is a vault toilet at the trailhead, and there is an open air pit toilet that can't accommodate really anything more than the lookouts. So that is an ongoing issue that we are trying to manage. And the range of visitors that we get, these are the singing nuns from St. Michael's, somebody might know, in Spokane. They hiked up in their full habit, so they're at 9350 right here. They hiked up in their gym shoes and then sang for us on the peak. It was really pretty spectacular. These are the 6th graders from Florence Public School. We didn't know they were coming. There were 50 of them. They just descended on the lookout in an instant. And we're like, where are your teachers? Where are your chaperones? Well, they were like 45 minutes behind. So that was kind of an entertaining day. And you may not be surprised, I looked out toward the pit toilet and there's a gaggle of about 7 14-year-old boys all standing around the pit toilet eating their lunch. Yeah, okay. I couldn't see it to get the full effect there. And back to the mission that was built by the Jesuit priest. It is still a church today. And so on one day in August on their anniversary, an entire group hikes up to St. Mary Peak, including the priest, and conducts mass at the peak. So again, you just never know. But one of the ways of trying to deal with the visitor impact and waste management is SBFC introduced a Trailhead Ambassador program. The role was created in 2021. So the picture here is at the trailhead, sort of a table with some information about leave no trace and wilderness, and you know, you're wearing shorts. It's warm here, but hopefully at 9350, you know, you have some other layers of clothes. It's really amazing people who get up there who hypothermia is potentially a risk. And then they perform routine trailhead maintenance. How am I doing on time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Staffing challenges. So we are indebted to the Bitterroot Backcountry Horsemen. They provide quite a bit of the lookout support and pack support for us. Requirements on, okay, so one quick story just on the staffing challenges in terms of lessons learned. Early on, we had somebody sort of back out at the last minute. We had a woman from Colorado who said, oh, I've spent a lot of time in the Bitterroot, and she was going to fly up to do this. So, okay, we're kind of in a jam. She calls me the day before and says, okay, I'm flying in tomorrow. I need the address for St. Mary Peak Lookout. And I'm thinking, address, does she want the lat long? No. Does she want the altitude? No. And I said, what do you need the address for? And she says, well, I plan to take an Uber. It's like, uh-oh, this might be a challenging pitch. Okay. And I should also mention, because Mark Wetherington is here, and Mark is one of our volunteer lookouts and has the distinction of having the shortest hitch, I think 24 hours, and the most exciting exodus. We had a fire, the Sherrod Creek fire last summer, and Mark got evac'd out. So go to his presentation and also ask him about that. And I think the last lesson learned is around addressing technology issues in the wilderness. I know everybody's faced with this. but we get people who hike up with drones and then try to fly them before we see them, or in this case, jump off with a, in a paraglider. So can we do lookout trivia? 3 quick questions. Yes. All right. So we have, as I mentioned, some bling. This is a refrigerator magnet, talk about low tech, with a picture of St. Mary Lookout on it. Here's the question. And just shout out the answer. Why is the Alliday known as the Osborne Firefinder?
Developed by Osborne.
He invented it.
Important. Who he invented it? Do you know what his name is?
No.
Yes. Yeah. We got to go with specificity. Okay. So that's it. Good job. All right. They get harder. Baby. Who designed the L4 hip roof cabin?
Oh,
Come on, you architecture student, you should know this.
Clyde Fix.
Clyde Fix. Woohoo! Woohoo! All right. All right, last question. I think this is a hard one. What is the name of the original interior color for an L4? Now we are deep in nerd land. Need a clue?
Forest green. Oh yeah.
Going once, going twice. Government green.
Government.
All right, last slide. You can imagine this is the view from the west, or to the west, excuse me, Heavenly Twins. And at the end of the day, with all these people, it's really quite a delight to be able to sit on the peak with. This is snow from the snowfield and a little tequila and a little margarita mix. And just have a little sip for the end of the day. So thank you.